What should have been a straightforward process. What should have been a straightforward process in hiring a chief executive has ended up being a complete catastrophe. And if it wasn't bad enough, if AROOJ SHAH, it wasn't bad enough for the leader of Oldham Council, AROOJ SHAH, to recruit a chief executive on the best part of £200,000 a year, no takers, what she and her council have claimed the recruitment process will now be is actually outright unlawful. But since when has that ever stopped them?
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very, very good evening. Sunday the 24th of September 2023. I'm now having to say the years as well so I can keep up when I look back on these transmissions. My name is Raja Mia. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. So the way these transmissions go out is if you don't subscribe, if you can't afford the 99 pence a month or don't want to pay the 99 pence a month, or some of you just don't operate that way, that's completely fine. If you feel able to, there's links there to buy me a coffee. Actually, it's buy me a samosa. Although I'm hearing I'm being threatened with an injunction for claiming samosas as a word, using the word samosa. I think I have every right to use the word samosa. It's a cultural dish of mine, of my community, my heritage. I'm not sure what Alexander Bogatov thinks he is. I don't know who he thinks he is, claiming I can't use the word samosa, or that I nibble on a samosa. Maybe he shoves it somewhere. Does our interim deputy borough solicitor Alexander Bogatov. Oh, Bogatov, just you wait, lad. Just you wait. Let's move on to the main news of this week, I think, which is the failure of Oldham Council to even identify a single candidate worth interviewing for the chief executive role. Now I'm going to bring up a few things and we'll work our way through it like we usually do. On the 11th of January 2022, the dates are important, Harry Caffrell was appointed for a further 3 years as chief executive of Oldham Council. This would have took him through to April 2025, 31st of March 2025. Dates are important, 31st of March 2025. It would have took him through to. And that news was in January 2022. Of course, in January 2022, AROOJ SHAH was still leader of Oldham Council. And Harry Caffrell was holding her hand and taking her around all of the wards, trying to whip up support for her. Those community events, those car crash events, yeah. So that was what was taking place. Come May, AROOJ SHAH lost the election and off she went. And then when she returned, her first announcement, one of her first announcements, that the chief executive of Oldham Council is set to leave the authority by the end of the year. So instead of staying until March 2025, he is going by December 2023. And the town hall has confirmed Harry Caffrell is retiring. You can see it there. So my belief, I can only share with you what I think that was, what has gone on here. My opinion on this is that I think Harry Caffrell did what Jim McMahon did. He jumped before he was pushed, and he was retiring because she wanted rid of him. AROOJ SHAH comes back in and she wants rid of him. He's not done what he was meant to have done, and the way out for him is he's retiring at Christmas. He's retiring 18 months, 2 years before he was meant to go. And off they go on a search for a chief executive. They advertised, and on Friday afternoon, and releasing news on a Friday afternoon is intentional, Oldham Council released this statement, which is that the plans to recruit a new chief executive for Oldham Council have been halted. This comes after the council's cross-party appointment committee today unanimously gave their backing to current chief Harry Caffrell remaining in post for a further 2 years. Let me explain what's gone on. The deadline for applications and the short shifting of stuff was Thursday. If the applications were not of a calibre required, and I'll get to why I think that is in a moment, there is no way between Thursday and this press release on a Friday that the appointments committee could have met and had a backup plan where if we can't get anyone, we'll bring Harry Caffrell back for 2 years on a part-time basis. Something dodgy has gone on there. Something not transparent, not open, and in keeping with how this council operates. So they've gone back to Harry Caffrell because they failed to get the calibre of, well, here, this is the Manchester Evening News headline. This Greater Manchester Council can't find anyone good enough to fill a £164,000 job. So the question surely has to be asked, why can't Oldham Council find anyone good enough? That's the first question, isn't it? The first question has got to be, why can't they? Why is the calibre of applicant so poor to come and lead Oldham? Well, I believe, it's the graveyard of a career, of a senior civil servant's career. Oldham is a graveyard because not one of them know what to do or how to fix it. Why would anyone risk their career coming to Oldham? Why would anyone risk their career coming to Oldham when this town is atrociously governed, so much so that it's lost the trust of its own people, as clearly demonstrated by those fake ASBIs, when citizens are denied access to a council chamber to attend and watch meetings on letter-headed paper stolen from the police because the police said they had nothing to do with it. I think GB News mocked them for crimes such as wagging your finger. Why would they? It's lost the trust of its people. It's in political turmoil. 3 council leaders ousted in succession demonstrates political turmoil. It's engaged in unlawful activity. Operation Hexagon, I maintain, is unlawful. The secret monitoring in partnership with Greater Manchester Police of citizens who object to the grooming and gang rape of the town's children is unlawful. What the council did to me is unlawful. Remember, AROOJ SHAH fabricated allegations against me that went all the way up to trial, where she then ran away from testifying. Who blew up her car? Do you not think candidates would have seen all of that? The cover-up of the gang rape of this town's children, the SEND inspection, and the fact that one of the most dangerous criminals in the country hangs off her arm. Which is why, when I press on this on the comments, and this isn't me, look at comment number 3. Look at comment number 2. Someone needs to stand up at one of Oldham Council meetings and say something about these criminal associations. Wonder if Andy Burnham or Keir Starmer have any views on this. And Mumps, whoever is, and this isn't me, this is, it's took its own life, this. Could offer it to Dale Cregan. And this is, of course, after So they failed to recruit. They failed to recruit months after, where the commander of Greater Manchester Police left under a mysterious cloud. And it's not a conspiracy theory. He left, he was pushed, he's disappeared. There's not been a statement. The most senior police officer, high profile, always on Twitter, front and centre of, GMP operation here, there. Absolute nonsense. He's left. He's run away. He's got sacked. Something's gone on there. The previous chief executive and the entire senior leadership team. They failed to recruit. And you all should be worried. As taxpayers, you all should be worried, because if you can't recruit the best, if you can't recruit sufficient talent at the top, it filters through the entire organisation. So there'll be an absence of competency at every level in the council. And this is why, if the opposition had anything about them, there would be a vote of no confidence. Because if you can't recruit a chief executive, surely that's a vote of no confidence in the council. What more clear example do you need? And the person they brought back, who was retiring, remember, has negotiated himself a part-time deal for an unspecified amount of money. I bet it won't be pro rata. I reckon he'll be getting more to do less. And of course you can't run an organisation like Oldham Council with a part-time leader, with a part-time chief executive. You can't. It's absolute madness. And they're giving him a 2-year extension from the 1st of January, which is when his contract was going to run out and he's going to retire. So he's here till 2026. It's crazy. So I went and found out who's on this committee, this appointments committee, because they're, well, let's have a look at a quote from AROOJ SHAH. I am absolutely delighted that Harry will continue to lead the organisation, seeing through the delivery of the exciting plans and projects he has put in place since joining us in 2021. While we did have a good field of candidates, no, you didn't. We felt the level of experience didn't meet the level of our aspirations and ambitions. What that means is you didn't have a good field of candidates. If you had a good field of candidates, you would have at least interviewed one. Not one of them met the minimum threshold, because that's how the law works, AROOJ SHAH. I know you like to play fast and loose with what the law is, but employment law is very simple. You put out an advert, there's a specification for the job, and if an individual meets the specification for the job, they're interviewed. You can't discriminate. So they didn't meet the minimum criteria, did they? They didn't meet the minimum criteria. So you're not absolutely delighted that Harry will continue to lead the organisation, because that's a contradiction. And this is the line. Yeah, he'll carry on for another 2 years, starting from January 2024. So Oldham Council won't have a chief executive of any till April 2026. How is that acceptable for any one of you? And how can a committee agree that? So let's look at who's on that committee. AROOJ SHAH is on that committee. Howard Sykes is on that committee. And do you know who the third person is who's on that committee? I'll have a slurp on my Vimto. Am I allowed to use the word slurp? Is that racist? Is that harassment? Hey, Bogatoff. Guess who the third person on that committee is? No, Gary or Denise. I thought it was. So I went and asked, did my thing. It's not Graham Sheldon. You know who it is? It's Cammy G. It's Cammy G. AROOJ SHAH's sidekick, former Labour Party councillor, fellow Pakistani businessman with his HMOs. It's Cammy G. So Cammy G, Howard Sykes and AROOJ SHAH have decided that they can go back to Harry Caffrell and let him renegotiate whatever he wants. And then they've decided that during this time work will take place to, and I quote, identify, train and develop a successor from within the council. That is outright unlawful. That is outright unlawful. You cannot ring fence the chief executive role to be an internal appointment, because that's what they've just said. During this time, work will take place to identify, train and develop a successor from within the council. Just give me 1 second, I'll find it in the council's own page here. Look. Following a meeting of the Cross-Party Appointments Committee this morning, members have now unanimously recommended that he be appointed for a further 2 years from January 2024, with some changes to his working arrangements. They won't tell us what changes. What is he, working 1 day a week? 1 day a month? I don't know. During those 2 years, is he, I can see him having a holiday home in Spain somewhere, can't you? Did he zoom in? Are we paying for his flights every time he comes to Oldham Council? Has he got a helicopter? During those 2 years, work will take place to identify, train and develop a successor from within the council. Sir, on the webpage, look. Just highlight you here. You can see. That's unlawful. That is outright unlawful. But even if it wasn't unlawful, do you not deserve to have the best person available to come in and do the job? That's what I'd want for a town with some of the highest council tax bills in the country. So you say Osman, Saeed Osman, Ian. Saeed Osman, of course, was Harry Caffrell's number 2 in Blackburn. And they found a way of appointing him. I don't have an issue with that. Every time I've gone into working places at a senior level, I've then taken my team with me on a fixed term basis to fix whatever it's just easy. I haven't got an issue with that. What I've got an issue with is why we are ring fencing the job to Saeed Osman if Saeed Osman already applied and wasn't good enough. If he was already one of the candidates and didn't have the experience and all the rest of it, didn't meet the minimum criteria, because if he met the minimum criteria, you'd have to interview him. Now, over a week ago, news got to me that they were trying to give the job to Saeed Osman, but they were worried I would object to it because he's a Muslim. And I'd convene that to you, and you lot would be outraged. Well, that's not on me, is it? I'm a Muslim. I don't think anyone has an issue he's a Muslim. I think they have an issue that he has, for the last year or so he's been here, been frequently visiting places where he's definitely been, nibbling on a samosa, eating some food. It's like he was the deputy chief executive who was sent out to all the community functions. He was the man who looked very nervously with the police officer stood next to him when they had to explain why they didn't arrest the OBA cartel-linked gangsters that battered that poor lad to an inch of his life before vigilantes went out on the streets and dragged these villains out their houses. He was forced to apologise at the last council meeting. Humiliated. He hadn't got what it takes to be a chief executive. But I believe there's something else going on here, which is why you need a vote of no confidence. One, they failed to recruit. They failed to attract anyone of the calibre. And the reason they failed to attract anyone of the calibre is because of who AROOJ SHAH is and her associates and her networks, as well as the cover-ups this council are involved in. And the loss of trust amongst the electorate. I don't think any of those conclusions are in any way contentious. How can those things be fixed? Well, clearly the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape isn't going to be fixed under AROOJ SHAH because she voted down a motion for a public inquiry. Clearly the prejudices from within some of the politicians, and the Muslim politicians, I'd say, in the Labour Party aren't going to be addressed by AROOJ SHAH because she never turned up for Pride, as Chronic Oldham pointed out. And when a question was asked in the council chamber, her deputy stood up and claimed it was Islamophobic to ask councillors to support gay people. Maybe in Saudi Arabia, lad. I don't live in Saudi Arabia. The car crash, that is the actual service provision, well, look what Ofsted said 2 weeks ago. Systematic failure. You know, the budget, the finances, the loans are a ticking time bomb. Even the council's own auditors flagged it as of concern. Her gangster associations. She gave an interview to the BBC claiming he was rehabilitated. At the time she gave an interview to the BBC claiming he was rehabilitated, he'd earlier been arrested for possession of an offensive weapon believed to be a machete and criminal damage. He was convicted on the day of her election win and was celebrating with her by the afternoon, and they released an official photograph of her, Irish Emir, and her brother, who's a convicted money launderer. Who wants any of that? Tell me, which decent, respectable, senior civil servant wants anything to do with any of that? And now, fast and loose with the law, she's claiming during these 2 years work will take place to identify, train and develop a successor from within the council. And I'll tell you why they want to do that. Because they want to keep a lid of all the corruption and criminality that infests the civic centre. That's what I believe. Why else would you want to do that? You want a nodding yes man or woman or gender neutral cucumber or whatever it is, samosa, sausage roll. They don't want someone independent from outside to come and look at this with a fresh set of eyes and think, hold on, that Raja Amir's right. The National Crime Agency need to be called in. The government need to be called in to take over this council. What this council has embarked on is unlawful, it's illegal. Which is why now you see across the political spectrum, not just locally but beyond, when people refer to Oldham, they refer to it as the most corrupt council in the country. So come on, Bogatov. Let's see that injunction. Because the evidence I have is when I've made reference to people in the council who are paedophiles, it's because they've been convicted for child sex offences. When I've made reference to individuals who've endorsed my murder, it's because AROOJ SHAH has endorsed my murder. When I've made reference to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children, it's because there has been a cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. And I'll see you at the ballot box. I'll see you at the ballot box whether the independents support me or not.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.